And welcome to Module 4. Here in Module 4, we will be building on what you did for your two companies in Module 3. However, in Module 4, we will be moving on to Chapter 5, which involves completing a risk analysis for your company. And back in Module 3, you completed 6 ratios for your two companies. And now in Module 4, there are 5 additional ratios that I would like you to complete. A current ratio, a quick ratio, an accounts payable turnover, long-term debt to shareholders equity ratio, and interest coverage ratio. Now, just like before, I'm going to go through these very briefly just so that I can kind of point out some key points of these 5 ratios that I think might give you trouble. The current ratio, I do not think you will have any trouble with the current ratio. I guess the one thing that I could point out is that this does say ratio, so this will be presented in the form of a decimal. I have a lot of people who try to submit this as a percentage, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I've seen in practice people using the current ratio as a percentage, because what it is basically saying is the percentage of your current assets as it relates to your current liabilities, or in other words, your ability to pay off your liabilities or current liabilities. But in general, or especially in this textbook, you will usually see your current ratio as a decimal, and that is I would say, the most accurate way of depicting it. Same thing for your quick ratio, except here we're not going to be using all of our current assets. Most of the items in the numerator are probably going to make sense to you. The one item that you may have to do a little bit more research on is what exactly is a short-term investment. And then you'll have to go down your line of current assets and ask yourself which of these would be considered a short-term investment. Next is your accounts payable turnover. Probably the most difficult part of this one is to find your purchases. Keep in mind on your financial statements, you're not going to have a line item that physically says purchases, but there is a formula for quote unquote purchases in your text. When we're focused on purchases, a lot of times we are talking about inventory. So again, same kind of notes as I've been saying before. If there is not inventory for your company, if that's not the purpose of why they're in business, just leave a note. Be sure to give as much detail as possible as to your reasoning about why or why not you choose not to include a certain ratio. Also in accounts payable turnover, there's also this average accounts payable. So just like before, whenever you see average, you're going to want to take accounts payable at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, and then average the two. So for example, if we're finding the average accounts payable for 2022, we'll take the 2022 accounts payable and average it with the 2021 accounts payable. For the long-term debt to shareholders equity, you'll notice in there, I should also say long-term debt, just like short-term investments. If you're struggling with long-term debt, take a moment to ask yourself which of those line items are considered long-term debt. But then also for total shareholders equity, it's not super clear in the text, but total shareholders equity, you will be using the parent's equity if there is any type of subsidiary. Interest coverage ratio. Again, when you're doing the interest coverage ratio, you want the parent's net income if there is some type of non-controlling interest income. And also for interest expense, be cautious on this one. You do want to make sure that you're picking your interest expense. And sometimes the interest expense may be listed as a negative, but you do not want to use the negative. You'll want to use the absolute value for that. So if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. So far, you guys are doing great. Just keep up the hard work. Nice job.